Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome to another captivating episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. Today we're diving into the unseen realms of frequency, energy, and 5D with a truly extraordinary guest, Dr. Kimberly McGeorge. Dr. Kimberly is a naturopathic doctor, energy healer, conscious teacher, and a renowned frequency master whose groundbreaking work is literally reshaping how we understand health, happiness, and wholeness. She has taken 25 plus years of clinical expertise and infused it with her deep knowledge of the unseen world, creating a revolutionary tool called the Affinity Scan, which I'm very excited to talk about. This isn't just cutting-edge technology, it's a portal into the hidden influences shaping our lives. Through her unique blend of advanced biofeedback, remote viewing, and intuitive gifts, Dr. Kimberly can identify influences like past life trauma, soul displacement, generational patterns, and even extraterrestrial energies. Her ability to spotlight the unseen causes of disruption and offer transformative solutions has made her a sought-after expert worldwide. Have you ever wondered how the frequencies of your energy field, ancestral roots, or even your soul family might hold the key to your deepest challenges? You're in for a treat. Get ready for an eye-opening conversation that will take you beyond the limits of the physical world into the extraordinary. Let's welcome Dr. Kimberly McGeorge to the show. Buckle up, everyone, because this is going to be a journey like no other. Welcome, Dr. Kimberly.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here. Your work bridges the worlds of science, spirituality, energy healing in such a way. Can you share a bit about your journey and what led to develop your groundbreaking approach with the Affinity Scan?
Sure. And I'm going to try to make it as short as possible because it's kind of long. I was born with pretty high level natural abilities to see spirits, had a lot of knowing, saw auras and shapes and things around people, could open and close portals, whole bunch of stuff, really locked it down. So I went to college. When I was in college, kind of brought it out, became well known as kind of the psychic advisor on campus. Over the years, got quite a reputation to where attracted the attention of the local police who were developing occult crime units at the time. So I was called in to advise on some possession cases and occult, like animal sacrifice, human sacrifice cases around the Chicago area, which I was only like 20, 21, 22 at the time. And I thought it was super glamorous, like the shows on TV, Ghost Whisperer, Medium, but not super glamorous, super traumatic, super horrible because you're dealing with really jaded people that really don't believe in the supernatural and they're just doing it because they have to. So that was a big learning experience. I thought I knew everything there was to know about the paranormal and the world. But of course, at 20, 21, 22, you really do not. So again, just a great learning experience. Went into natural health. My first job was for a chiropractor, kind of got into natural health a little bit then, went back home to Ohio, got married, had children, had some health problems, started studying alternative medicine, practiced as a herbalist, organic gardening, a mail order company with supplements internationally, wrote for a couple magazines as an herbalist, eventually went back and got my naturopathic doctor degree, started a practice in Columbus, Ohio, a clinical practice, when we used to do everything in person. Now we don't do anything in person, but, and eventually discovered biofeedback and the technology that goes with biofeedback, which led from these big machines to now we have the apps. So there's a number of biofeedback wearable devices. There's a lot of apps that are now biofeedback. So started integrating applied kinesiology and energy medicine and biofeedback into my practice about 35 years ago. Had developed a couple apps on my own and pulled part of the patent for the Halo device, which is a PEMF frequency device. And I still program the frequencies for the Halo PEMF device. So yeah, that's kind of my short story.
Okay. Well, it's always good to get a little background because we've got some interesting questions. And I think that we're going to delve into some unique stuff that people have a lot of curiosities about. Let's start with the Affinity Scan. It has been described as a revolutionary Can you share how it goes beyond traditional biofeedback and what makes it so unique in identifying unseen influences?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of technology that the general public still doesn't know about. We're comfortable with things like the ultrasound machines, the MRI machines, medical technology. This is a medical technology device. I don't know if you've heard of the Body Wireless Network or the Medical Body Wireless Network. So we're already using, the concept of no time and no space. They're dispersing medications. The doctors are already doing exams, like you and I are, or even not like you and I are. So the device that I use is a quantum device. It moves outside of time and space, which is why I don't have to be in the presence of people. And medical science, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, it's all catching up, with what I've been really doing and using for 35 years. So what makes it different, though, is because of my background, both in the paranormal and the supernatural, and my ability, I used to practice as a medical medium. Well, not just a medical medium, I don't even know what I would call what I used to practice as. I have the ability since at birth to merge with any item, any device, any person, any animal, tree, it doesn't matter, it can be, quote, living or non-living, and become that being from the inside out. Before I had technology, I used to crawl around people's bodies. I would crawl around their veins or their arteries and say there's calcification, or I would look at the color or the size of things. I wasn't a medical doctor, but when you're crawling around someone's body, you definitely can tell the difference between like a healthy artery and a non-healthy artery. Not only that, I would see energetic mass of colors similar to auras, but they would be like around organs, or there would be blockages, and this would be energetic. This wouldn't even be like the physical mass of the body. So I had that point of view. So it was really cool to get a device where I call myself the lazy psychic or the lazy medium now, because I don't have to crawl around your body. We're radio broadcasting towers. So every single thing I'm thinking, every single thing I'm feeling, every parasite, every surgery, I believe in past lives. So every past lives, everything is held in a couple different places. From this incarnation, it's held in the body tissues. And we know that from a number of studies and a number of books. I think there's a book like, what is it? The body holds the story, or the body holds the trauma, or something there. But there's been a number of massive amounts of studies about how the body holds memory, and you stick different events and different feelings in different muscle groups, in parts of your body. And so the common teaching, which is wrong, is that our memory is in our brain. It's not. Your memory is not in your brain. Your memory is obviously in your eternal soul. It goes from life to life. So obviously that records what I call coming out of the void, or the all, or some people would say God. But you also hold everything in your energy field. So because you hold everything in your energy field, it can be read by anybody that has what we would call psychic abilities or natural abilities. That's how they're reading you. They're reading you because they can interpret this broadcast, just like we're on a broadcast, they can interpret that broadcast, and then they can get information from that. And so that's how psychics and people that are truly talented do it. But, it's so great because the tech gives you this massive thousands of data points. And then, just like any doctor or practitioner, how you use it is up to you, and how good you are at using it and how you apply it is to your interests, to your knowledge base, to your studies, to the depth of who you are as a human being. So a lot of people think they can buy the technology and be me. And I'm like, good luck. First of all, you don't want to be me. I promise you. Second of all, you can't take 35 years of massive clinical experience, and teach somebody that just because you have the same device. So there is a lot of people, you can buy an ultrasound machine too, but, there's going to be definitely a curve in usage and understanding and interpretation. So I love the woo, Dr. Sandra. So I focus my practice. Yes, I do talk about physical, mental, emotional, we're whole people. But, a lot of people want to know what's happening to them at night. They want to know about incubus, succubus. They want to know if they have human discarnates. I found out I didn't even mean to, but in running thousands and thousands and thousands of people's fields every year, I've learned a lot about the soul. I've learned about walk-ins and walkouts. I've learned about what we would call NPCs, soulless people. I thought I knew everything there was to do when I did my first exorcism at 20, and I thought I knew all there was to, it's so funny, all there was to know about possession, but I've learned so much about possession. And so I'm data driven. People think I'm really woo-woo and crazy. I'm actually very data driven. I go with the data, even if it's against my personal beliefs.
Well, the data will tell the story. It brings it all together to tell the story, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I have questions about all those things which have come up previously in life that there's not many people that you can have conversations with about them. Can you describe the most surprising, profound discovery you've encountered through the infinity scan?
Gosh, there's so many. Like I said, one of the most profound discoveries, which will run.
I imagine you're full of books.
Oh, for sure. I just need time to write them for you. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You know how that is. I think you are full of them too, to be honest. I can read that. One of the most surprising discoveries does go back to, like I said, I was from a Christian background. I thought I knew everything about like what the body was. What is this? What is, I call it the avatar now, but what is the body? What is the avatar? Didn't know anything. One of my most profound discoveries, and it's very simplistic, is this is what the body is. It's just a container. Nothing more, nothing less. Sophisticated container, wetware, computerized container, but it's just a container, meaning obviously there's water in here, but guess what? I could pour this water out and put vodka in it, right? I could pour this water out and put orange juice in it. I could keep the water in it and add orange juice, right? And then it becomes orange juice, still orange juice plus water. So one thing I've discovered through running so many people's bodies is I know what's inside them. You don't know what's inside them. And a lot of times we are not alone in our bodies. And the main reason for that I've also discovered is I used to teach 20 years ago when I was first teaching consciousness, we go out of the body. It's all about getting out of the body to the astral, getting out of the body to lucid dreaming, get it out. But now I've learned the way we prevent not being us alone in the body is, and being jumped or possessed, it's actually possession, the old fashioned word. I call it jump now because people seem to accept that better, is holding your body, filling your whole body up, expanding, not being out of body, because we see a lot of people ungrounded. I run people's fields where they're literally, their soul is standing next to their body. Well, bodies are prime real estate in this world, this game.
Oh,
so
wow.
Guess what? You're going to stand next to your body. Something else, some spirit, a human discarnate, elemental. There's many, many types of beings, groups of consciousness. Other things are going to come in and take that body. If you're not going to hold your body, somebody else is. We also see such a violation of the arc field. So you'll hear a lot in spiritual circles about spiritual protection. Here, I'll give you an example. We're going to carry this little rock. I'm going to carry this little jade rock, and that's going to protect me, right, from the spiritual forces. Dr. Sandra, if right now you could get through my door and I'm holding this little rock, is me holding this little rock going to stop you, a human being, from coming through my door, doing me harm? No. So why is it going to stop a powerful ancient being with massive memory? We don't even have our memories. Our memories are wiped. Who has their full memory, full powers? How is me holding this little rock going to protect me? So there's all this false teaching in spirituality and the New Age movement and light and love. Nobody knows where we are. Nobody knows what this is. Nobody knows how this works, how the soul works. Nobody understands what a walk-in is. One of my other profound discoveries is, and it's been illustrated in my personal life with my son-in-law, which is so interesting, is I've only known my son-in-law 10 years. He's been married to my daughter for 10 years. He has walked in and walked out 15 times. He's had 15 different soul groups in him since I've known him. And the behavior changes, the personality changes, the likes change, the dislikes change, everything changes, communication style. Similar, I used to work for the heart transplant team, similar to what we saw when we got to know the heart transplant patients, and then they would have a heart put in them, and then their personality would change. They would have, so same thing.
A new heart.
We struggle in life.
There's a lot of literature on that.
There is. But part of the reason we struggle in life is we are so unaware. We think we know because of the programming of religion or the programming from college or the programming from this author or this podcast. I wipe that off. Do you know what I mean? I wiped it all, and I go from the frequency, because frequency doesn't lie. Truth can be known, and all truth can be known. We're also not taught that because that's scary. The controllers wouldn't like that very much if you can figure out what's a lie, or what news story is real, what news story is false.
Yeah.
So we're very disempowered. And I think in the age of Aquarius, which is what we're in now, I think there's part of the release of technology like this and allowing us to have it and allowing people like me to be at the forefront of pushing the industry this way is that there will be no more lies and there will be no more secrets. And so we're all going to be called to a much more authentic way of living, both collectively and personally.
Well, I would agree. The astrology, definitely, that's the blueprint that's set with it. And this is really, it's interesting. And that's why I love doing this podcast. And you're just such a breath of fresh air and unique in what you're doing, because it's just what you said. Like, a lot of people, they have their crystals and their different kinds of woo-woo that they're using. But with this shift that's happening, all the conversation is being focused on frequency and vibration at the bottom of it. And I love the bottle of water. I've heard a lot of people speak to the human container more as a car. Basically, we control the car and we're driving it. So that's interesting. Before we get into walk-ins and stuff, I'm really excited to talk to you about that. That sort of came up in my purview back in the 90s. And when I saw that you did work with that, I was like, oh my God, like someone I could actually ask some questions about this.
Interesting.
Just real quick before we move on, can you walk us quickly through what a session would look like with this for people who are trying to wrap their minds around it?
Sure. So I do one-on-ones, like, you and I on screen. However, I really discourage people from doing that because it's so much more economical for me to do it on my own time, to run your energy. And then I give you usually I give you a recorded. Sometimes in the shorter ones, I'll write it out. Or if for some reason you're having trouble with the English language, I'll write it out because people can read it better. But really what it looks like is you send me a picture or your birth date, either one, and I run it through the system, and then you can direct it or not. I have a top scan. Like if you're like, well, my left knee's hurting and I'm kind of wondering what's going on, or I'm having problems with my mom, and can you look at my mom? Like, people sometimes direct this scan. They have specific issues, or when am I going to meet my soulmate? The typical questions. Or sometimes they're like, I just want to know what my body's saying. Like, because what we find is the oversoul in the body has its own priorities, and it may not be yours. Like, you might be worried about your blood sugar, but the body might be like, you know what? I'm a little more worried about keeping the heart beating, and you got something going on with your heart. So I like it when people say, okay, I want to know what the body is screaming about, or what my oversoul. So I'm able to, run you through millions and millions and millions and millions of items that you couldn't even comprehend what I have, because I write all this back-end programming, again, based on my knowledge base, my clients and my interests. And, it'll pull, let's say, the top screaming things. What is your body screaming about? What needs to be addressed right now? So I love those. So I usually start out with an aura reading, and I'll tell you a little bit about your aura, and I'll give you that aura picture so you can see it for yourself and intuit for yourself. Then from that, I'll go to the oversoul overview, and then I'll dig into just wherever I see or I'm led intuitively, or I will follow your direction for your specific question. I do animals, I do homes, I do property, I do employees, I do people's mothers, fathers, husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. Children are a big thing, of course. So, I'm also able to run other people, and everybody's like, Dr. Kim, aren't you worried about being struck by lightning because you don't have permission? I'm like, no, I don't believe that. And I don't believe that, Dr. Sanders, because we all read energy without permission. You go in the grocery store, no matter who you are, and you're reading energy, you're like, they look a little skanky. She looks rich. He looks kind. She looks mean. What are you doing? You're reading their energy without permission. So there doesn't need to be permission to read energy, because everything has a frequency. Everything broadcasts. And I'll tell you, if you guys who are spiritual are going to read energy, you're going to be taken advantage of by the controllers in the dark side who reads energy all day long. So I don't believe that. I don't ever ask permission. Anyone that knows me, it's so funny. Right before this show, my daughter, who's in medical school in Maine, she sent me a text. She goes, Mom, I lost my earbuds. Can you tell me if they're somewhere in my apartment and I'm going to find them in a week after I bought new ones, or if I should go buy new ones? I said, I don't think they're in your apartment. Go buy new ones. That's reading energy. I happen to bilocate. I kind of rummaged around her apartment. I didn't see them anywhere. So I'm like, okay, go buy new ones. But like, everything can be read, because all time is now, all space is now, all information is now. And that's all information about everything. And so I think people find that really disempowering and intimidating. I find it so delicious and so empowering, and I'm highly practiced in reading it. And I can teach you how to activate your abilities and teach you guys how to read it yourself. So I find it just very empowering that if you're being authentic, there's really nothing to fear, because nobody's perfect, right? There's no perfect person. There's no perfect home. There's no perfect job. There's no perfect situation. There's no perfect marriage. There's no perfect parent-child relationship. I don't know what we're afraid of. The only thing to me that we would be afraid of a person like me or technology like mine would be if you're lying, if you're deceiving, if you aren't being authentic. Otherwise, I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant for people who want to do their spiritual work. There's plenty of spiritual work I do every week and every day that the tech lays bare. It's the subconscious. It's the beliefs beyond the beliefs. And we can get to all that. And it's so exciting and magical. Some people find it depressing. I think you have to know the problem to find the solution. You have to know the imbalance to balance it.
Correct. Well, I love this. I love how you explain it, keeping the questions broad. It's sort of like that rudimentary medical where people come in sort of with what they think the diagnosis is versus just tell me the story and let me figure out what's working and what's not. And the other thing is that, with everything that's going on and with AI, which I think is just going to bring brilliant, beautiful things to our lives, it's going to be really exciting to see the medical community catch up with you because they're so far behind you. And there's going to be just so many shifts with that, but we're going to get into that a little more.
It's so funny you say that. I actually, I've been reading and studying a lot of the papers and watching a lot of medical symposiums about it. And my daughter's like, are you afraid they're going to drive you out? I said, thankfully, I've chosen to focus on the woo. Not that I can't focus on what they're focusing on, but they're so far away from the woo. By the time I'm dead, they won't even be there yet. So I'm not afraid. I'm excited that people are going to be getting better medical care across the world. I'm not threatened, that I'm going to be driven out of business, but I'm excited that they're using. I know people are against it. And I guess there's always the potential, a surgeon can use a knife to kill you or can use a knife to heal you, right? There's always that potential for that double-sided misuse. And I know they're all concerned about privacy, but aren't medical records hacked all the time? And they send us a thing, guess what? United Healthcare was hacked, or, you know what I mean? Your insurance was hacked and they have all your information. They send us these notices all the time. So I don't think there is any privacy. I think we need to get over privacy.
I honestly think it's just people protecting their fiefdoms. And, it's the fear of the unknown, right?
I get that, especially the older generation.
They see it as a competition versus a collaboration for the betterment of things. That's my personal opinion with it. If, you remove the greed component from it all, it would look a lot different. That's just my personal opinion. When you get into medicine, sorry, I've been in medicine too long. I can get a little jaded with that sometimes. So how do you determine whether an influence is coming from within a person, like a past life, a soul displacement, or if it's external, like an extraterrestrial force?
It's just spelled out. It's, like I said, the tech that I use is customizable. And, I've been programming software for a long time. So I know how to program so that it's clear. It's very clear whether, what it is. And I can even drill down. And again, you can't separate me really from the technology. I use a lot of my own abilities. People think one of my criticisms from my competitors, especially in the psychic field, they're like, oh, she uses AI, she uses tech, she doesn't use her psychic abilities. And that's not true. I can't separate me from me. If I'm programming the tech with my data and then I'm using my psychic abilities, there's a lot of me in with that AI. It's not just AI. It's very specific because I'm working with people and I know after 35 years, just like you know what I'm talking about. You know what your people are going to ask. Mm-hmm. If someone's concerned about diabetes, there's going to be certain things they're going to ask. If they're concerned about cancer or feminine problems. Mm-hmm. You see these trends and with your knowledge base, I can see you already have ideas of protocols or ideas of tests. You have a way of going about things because you have the data points, whether they're conscious or written down or just in your knowledge base. You have a way of doing things based on all the clients that came before. And you and I both learn with every patient for you, client for me that comes into I think we build and we tweak and we refine and we learn. I'm sure you do. And we take the information from that client and we make it better for the next client, if that makes sense. Or we retract, or we're like, oh, I was a little off in that. I'm going to add this, or I'm going to not do this. And I think it's the nature of a certain kind of mind to be very specific. I have the ability, I say I'm like the guy in Prison Break. I have the ability to get in massive amounts of data and see the patterns. You also have that ability.
Yeah, patterns are a big deal for me. Always have been.
I know. I can see it in your field.
Right. It's a gift I've tried to explain to people, and they just look at me like I, have two heads sometimes.
It's the best gift. It is. I have had this. It's just such a juicy gift. I'm glad you have that. I don't meet a lot of people that haven't. So it's such a great gift.
I'll usually say it's my being on the spectrum is what I'll call it is the pattern thing.
My children would agree with you.
How do frequencies from past lives or soul families manifest in someone's current health or emotional state? Like, what would that look like?
It's so interesting. Well, first of all, I like to tell people, well, here's something I found that you'll find interesting, I think. So I used to think, and maybe this is programming or religion, I don't know where I got this idea from, but I kind of thought we have a soul and it's one thing, it's one, my phone's not pink. My bank card, my bank card is red, so our soul is red. But when I looked at the soul and started writing programming about the soul, what I found out, which was mind blowing, was we don't have like a soul that's red. We have a soul that's like red, pink, purple, blue, yellow, green. And these are all past lives. And there's a frequency. So even though I'm using colors to simplify it, you could say cetacean, Palladian, elemental, fae, whatever beings or participants we choose to bring in. And this is smart. Of course we would. We're limitless, eternal, powerful beings of millions and millions, trillions and billions of years old. So of course we're not just going to be red. Who wants to just be red when you can be 40 different expressions as one and then bring forth what you need from that memory, from that gift, from the particular strengths of that race or that time or that knowledge base. So what's so magical about that? Everybody's like, okay, we're not talking religion. We're talking a different type of people that are looking for guidance from different, not religion. I'm just putting that aside for now. But, people are like, I want, who could I ask for assistance or who could I ask for help? Well, if you're 20 or 10 or 12 or 15 or 40 different fragments as a whole, I say it's a whole pizza, not a slice of pizza, you bring all of it with you. Guess what? You have 40 different families to reach out to. I can say, okay, the Alcyon Palladians, hey, mom, dad, sis, brother, cousin, best friend, because remember all times now. So we're living all these lives currently. We have all these relationships currently. We then have specific groups to reach out for, specific relationships to remember, work on remembering and developing. And we end up having way more assistance. It's not just this general plea to the multiverse, help me. It's mom, dad, like I said, cousin, husband, brother, whatever. These people that care about you, that you may even choose after this life to go back to the Alcyon Palladians or go back to being a mermaid or go back to being a fairy or go back to being a dog or whatever you were. We have way more. Okay, we also have way more enemies than we think. But the positive side of that is we have way more help than we think. So it gives people specific, relationships to start building that they already actually have. They just don't remember that they have. So that's been a really magical discovery that's really given people a lot of comfort because every one of those races has a certain frequency. Everything has frequency.
Right. That being said, and you referred to the game before, as we're transitioning out of what feels like a denser dimension, we'll call it that, people call it the third dimension, into the fifth dimension. As part of this transition, do you feel like we're going to transition into starting to have memory of these past lives and have some of our fractals come together so that we can have clear understanding and grow? I mean, I feel like that's a truth, but like I have nothing to back it up.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and I know this is more a turn of phrase than you being super literal, but, so we used to all say third dimension, third, and then everyone kind of jumped to the fifth. We're actually at 4.5 as a collective right now. Here's what's happening in Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, all the Bigfoot shows. This showed us this. People started being open 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. They started really catching on and being open to that. Well, in order to see the fourth dimension, which is where a lot of the ghosts, the Sasquatch, the Dogmen, the fairies, the magical beings hang in the fourth and fifth, you have to actually be in the fifth dimension. So my belief is even the common people, not people like you and I that are semi-awake, but even my mom and dad, for example, which are very religious people, they're even coming up in their abilities because we're at 4.5. So they can start to see 3.5 because you have to be a whole dimension above to see below. So the reason I can see and why I'm ahead of a lot of things is because, and you are too, is because you and I are already in the 5th, 6th, 7th and up. We're up in the upper densities. So we're tuned into ahead of the masses. See, the masses are only at 4.5, which means they can only see 3.5. But you and I are in the upper densities, which is why we're tuned to the more higher. Do you see what I mean? Density ideas.
This makes total sense to me. It's a beautiful thing. And then living in this world, it can sometimes, make you feel a little isolated, but that's okay.
It is exciting. Yeah, and we do. And I love that you brought that up. That's brilliant. And again, shows your knowing, which is actually, everybody's like, I want to see like you. I want to hear like you. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. I want to know like you. No, you don't. No, you don't. I want to see timelines. I want to do this. I'm like, okay, fine. Yes. But you all are born. We all know what we know, what we know, what we know, but we don't honor what we know. I'll give you an example. So one of my soul fragment pieces is cetacean. And even before I looked at my own soul and found all this out about the soul compositions and things I didn't know, which has been over the past 10 years, I moved into this new house and I just had to decorate my bedroom a certain way. And anybody that walked in my bedroom would be like, are you 3 years old? And the reason why they would say that is my walls are painted blue. It's covered with mermaids and dolphins and whales and fish. Why? Because I'm cetacean. And I know, and this is before I knew Dr. Sandra, and you guys have things in your lives that if you would be present with yourself and have some silence in your life and have some space in your life and stop running around crazy with the programs of the 3D distraction game, you would have these moments where you're like, that's why I love the piano, because I played the piano 3 past lives ago and was famous and wrote tons of music. Like some of this stuff starts to click, but in order for us to remember, we have to sit with ourselves. We have to have a silent mind. We have to be not being attacked by all the technology, not being all the nanotech crawling around our body. Like there has to be time for some of this. Everybody's like, oh, you're so lucky. Some of this is hard work. Yeah. Some of this is discipline, Dr. Sandra. It's not all like magical. I was lucky. I've been here 85 times. This isn't lucky. This is stupidity. What you're looking at isn't luck. This is stupidity. It took me 85 times to get to that. This is the last time and to understand what's going on,
The good thing about that is we're truly all in that same boat on some level.
True. We're all here. Yeah. We're all here together. You're right about that. Yeah, for sure.
How did the generational influences or the ancestral trauma appear in the infinity scan, and how can they be healed? So there's, the whole ancestral healing has really sort of made its way to the forefront, and I'll say in the underground mainstream is how I'll put it. So if you could talk to that a little bit.
Sure. Well, DNA is just frequency. Definitely the family lines, the body avatar, unfortunately, DNA does have, not just on a medical standpoint of your weaknesses and strengths. I just did a scan yesterday and I said, which blows people's minds how I can see this. And I'm like, you have stroke in your family, so you need to watch for that. That's something you need to, in your avatar, you need to mitigate for that. You need to be tested. You need to keep on that. And she's like, oh my gosh, how do you know? Like tons of people died of strokes. I'm like, it's a frequency. It's in her field. So even though she may not have had a stroke, and I know you know this because I can read you, what shocks people is when I tell them almost everyone, even children, have had many strokes and many heart attacks. They freak out. And I'm like, it's just the nature, like, of the body. Like, it's not that big a deal. Like, there's blips, there's like small fissions, there's small explosions, there's small electrical thing. I call it, that might not be the medical term, but that's how I see the energy. And so when you get in someone's field, you can see when they've had a lot of those. I don't know what, I'm sure you would know the medical term, but it's almost like it looks to me like a pre-major incident. It's like tiny little.
Yeah, TIA.
I knew you would know. Yes. So, I can see that because it has a frequency. But in the ancestral thing, we see this going back, a lot of us were our ancestors, which is a whole nother conversation. Usually you are either 3 to 5th generations back. You can find someone in your family line. You were that person. So that's interesting, first of all, that we keep reincarnating or find ourselves in same family lines. Interesting.
Oh, that is very interesting.
Or at least one aspect of us, because we haven't even talked about how most of us are not just present in this incarnation in one body. And you may not know this or may not have heard me talk about it, but my family works in human cloning and the transfer of human consciousness. So I also have all this information coming from them about what's going on and their data and their experiments. But what I know from my own reading the energy and them is that we also are this us, but memory wiped from this point of attention is the same exact soul frequency, because each soul has a specific frequency. So my soul frequency might be 732.46. So that exact frequency with no deviation will be in multiple bodies. Now, it may be multiple bodies that are clone bodies, or it may be bodies that my oversoul just wanted me to have a different experience, to be a man that is a garbage collector. You know what I'm saying? Or to be a child who dies in bricks. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And it gets really confusing. But when we talk about the genetics in this incarnation, in this body, in this point of attention, we can see that because the DNA is just a frequency. So because of the programming and my knowledge base that I have in the memory that's awakened, we know that we need to clear 50 generations back. And because all time is now, any work we do in clearing anything goes backward and forward in your line. So I went to a psychic about a year ago, and I don't go to other psychics very often, but I went to a psychic and he looked at me and he made me cry immediately. He said, wow. He goes, your children should thank you. I'm like, why? He goes, because you've cleared and cleared and cleared and cleared and cleared so much in your genetic line backward and forward. And it's really going to benefit your children and grandchildren. And how could he read that? Because everything I've ever done is broadcasting everything I've ever known, everything I've ever thought. Because thoughts are a frequency, words are a frequency, deeds are a frequency, actions are a frequency, and we carry all that information with us. And again, the higher adept, skilled beings can read that frequency. So all the tech is making it easier and giving me, instead of me reading you, Dr. Sandra, just me, where I get this much data in an hour, the tech gives me mountains of data, which then I can say, okay, here's the data to your interests, and here's how we can chart a path forward. Usually I talk very fast and I record 25 to 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes, depending on who it is or what it is, sometimes even 10. And they have a whole list that they work on for a year. Because not only can we tell you what's wrong, we can tell you what your body wants to fix it.
Love it.
Specifically for you.
I love it. That is just so powerful.
So, and of course, I have to be careful because I'm not you. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't diagnose and prescribe.
I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a nurse doctor.
Still, a lot of work there, a lot of respect there, and pretty close because I know what you do.
Oh, no, I know. I just, you know how medicine is. You have to identify yourself clearly.
But I just want to clearly say that although I do not say do this, I do not prescribe. What I do say is this is what's worked for me. This is what's worked for other patients.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But and I let them choose. I give them a whole bunch of choices from cheap to expensive to, and I have given medical doctors more business than you could ever imagine, or people like you. You know what I say all the time? You need to be genetically tested. Go find a good functional medicine doctor, a doctor of osteopathy. I would even refer people to you. I don't know if you're still practicing. We can talk about that later. But I'm always looking for medical professions. I think your hormones are out of balance. You need blood tests. You need saliva tests. You need to work continually with someone. So I am constantly, by no means do I try to do that. So many people have been so thankful to be referred because they've gotten such relief then with the experts in the field, So I don't do it all. I'm not trying to say I do, but I clearly see the imbalances and then I try to direct people to where they can get help.
Yeah, all good medical intuitives do that, I believe. I saw a fella back in the 90s that I saw for many years, and he cleared and healed, worked with the energy and the frequencies. And then there was one point where he's like, I need you to go see your medical doctor and, get this ultrasound on this because I think you have something going on. And I was like, oh.
I love that. That speaks to his
well, this is so unusual. I better take this pretty doggone serious because he usually doesn't tell me to do that.
Right.
Can you explain the difference between a soul displacement and a soul walk-in and how this phenomena affects our energy and our health? I am just so fascinated with soul walk-ins.
So a lot of times there's a walk-out. And I can actually see when the soul's about to walk out because it looks like when you're camping and you're getting ready to go to bed for the night and you've been sitting around the fire roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. And at least this way.
Absolutely.
and you're getting ready to go to bed at night. And the fire is dying as embers. And you're like, okay, pour water on it. Or, someone's staying up, whatever. But so a person who's about to walk out, their soul looks like a dying out campfire that's just barely warm, glowing. Whereas someone who's not going to walk out, who's cemented in the body, who's over their hara line, it looks like a huge blazing, you know what I mean? Like tall, passionate, full of life, fire. So we can tell when people are about to walk out. Sometimes people walk out, like I said, and stand, or they walk halfway out. They're halfway out of their body. And you would call this, in the medical or psychological community, would call this disassociation. So a lot of people feel disassociated and they're like, why do I feel like I'm so out of it all the time and I'm not really here? And I'll look at their field and I'll be like, 'cause you're half out of your body, and you can be half out side to side, or you can be half out up and down, or you're, like I told you, you can be standing beside your body. And I'm like, get in your body. You're going to immediately, like, you can cure yourself. A lot of it, they don't need to take medicine. They don't need to take vitamins. They don't need to go to the doctor. They need to ground. And I don't mean ground into the earth, because I believe this is a simulation game. What is there to ground into? It's a simulation. You need to learn how to lock into yourself. And that's by locking the chakras into the hara line. We use essential oils. I never wear shoes.
Interesting.
The only time I wear shoes is in a public place. I will stack wood on ice outside in 30 degrees with no shoes. I do not wear shoes because that grounding for me and the work I do, I have to stay in my body or I would go crazy. I mean, if I went home, because of the amount of information I'm in and fields I'm in, energy I'm in, you have to be cemented in your body. You have to be, you do too, to do what you do. You have to be, despite you're in my art.
Yeah, I actually am barefooted at the moment.
Yes, am I. Yeah, and that's what I mean. You know that, though, because you've struggled with it, as I have, because I can remember your childhood. Since you were a child, we have struggled with that more airy, fiery out there, which is why we've been labeled what we've been labeled and treated how we have, and we've had to come to love. And you've had a similar journey to me, where we've learned to celebrate those differences, where we struggle with those differences, a lot of our life. And a lot of people can relate to this conversation as well. Mm-hmm. But I think you intuitively, Dr. Sandra, learned to ground and learned that you needed that to kind of make your way successfully. And I learned that too. Intuitively, we learned what we needed to use our extraordinary gifts, but remain tangible or relevant in the 3D world, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And someone said to me that it's interesting that like shoes, footwear we have, all has rubber soles and the rubber interferes with the grounding. Like, I never really thought about it. They put it out there that was something done intentionally to keep us ungrounded, but that didn't resonate with me, that would be an intentional creation or invention from years ago. But it did really make me think about, we do all walk around with shoes with rubber soles most of the time, which means much of the Western world is ungrounded.
Yeah, and I also think the more, even wearing clothes, I know this is going to be weirdly controversial, but I think our bodies, our avatars are created to read sensations, like interpret through the skin. Our skin is a very, good sensory interpreter. We get information, of course, we know through our hair. I recommend even older women keep their hair long, because we know that this is antenna to all information, psychic information. And that's too, there's many studies on that as well. And that's why they shave the head in the military. They don't want you intuiting. They don't want you rebelling. They don't want you figuring anything out. They want you complying to authority. So they take your antennas, so it's easier for you to fall into line and not read any of the information for yourself. But I think we wear too many clothes. My children always say they're not putting me in a retirement home. They're putting me in a nudist colony when I'm old, because intuitively, I feel like I connect better. I know this is weird, with less clothing, I just do. And thankfully I live in the middle of the woods, so I don't traumatize too many people except the planes. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of, I don't know if it's deliberate, like you said. And then of course we know that the polyester is horrible, and that if you guys want to do an experiment, I've changed all my bedding to, all natural, fibers, linen and cotton and hemp and, organic. And I sleep better. It feels cozier. It feels more self-nurturing. So if you guys have like polyester blankets, you can do your own experiments. Just get a cotton blanket, just get a linen blanket, just get a hemp, or, all these amazing things we have access to now, and feel the difference and observe how you feel when you wake up and observe how easy you go to sleep. And there's just so many simple things we can do for people whose nervous systems are screaming on. People test a lot and comes up a lot in the tech for the weighted blankets. And you have to get used to it because your nervous system is screaming.
I love my weighted blanket.
On, it feels like you're dying. But when you fall back into it, eventually it brings it down and you'll love it. And it'll be something that you welcome. My best naps in the world have been taken under a weighted blanket. And to wake up and just have that nervous system so low and almost turned off is just beautiful. So, the things I recommend are often cheap and easily available and just found with hundreds of clients to have like exponential, amazing benefits.
Yeah, I love my weighted blanket. Always have.
Not surprised you have one.
So going back to, the walk-ins, and they just truly fascinate.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the impact on their life, because when you talked about, say, your son-in-law who had a series of walk-in and walk-outs.
Well, right now, the one we're kind of struggling with, my daughter just said to me a couple of days ago, she's like, I don't want to know what to do with this new John. I mean, he like rock climbing and he used to be very passive and be like, kind of like, yes, dear, whatever you want, real chill, real laid back. She'll be like, can you do the dishes? She'll be like, no, I don't want to. Like, that's like, what? Like that's such an opposite. I'm glad my children are so on the same way, conscious, because that would probably, we wonder, it's so funny to me. It's just explains so much, even divorce. So of course, that's a whole long conversation. Sometimes we get married too young. We don't know who we are. We don't know who they are. People change, yada, yada. But all that aside, what if you're getting divorced or your relationships aren't working because literally it's not the person you married? I don't mean it's not the person you married because they decided to reveal their true selves or they were lying. That's not what I mean. I mean, literally, it's the same container you married, but it's not the same raw essence. And so I think a lot of things don't work because there's so much more of this going on. And then it gets further complicated because we have walk in, walk out, but then we have how many beings are inside of you with that original soul or new walk-in or whatever. Like, it's so much more. I mean, it's not complicated to me because I can sort it all out, but I feel sorry. And I don't mean this meanly, but I do feel sorry for people that are not me because you're fighting with a being that may not be the original soul. The original soul may be standing back, or you're fighting with someone who has 40 beings in them. And I'm not talking about the fractals that we talked about. I'm not talking about their soul fractal. I'm talking about literally other beings. And so a lot of our problems, I think, are created by prankster energies and dark agendas. And sometimes higher beings come in too. So sometimes I see what I call one of the trends I'm seeing, which is a whole nother probably 2-hour conversation. By 2025, it's been predicted, and you can look this up, just type it in. You guys can find the symposiums and the papers and the study.
2 weeks
by 2025, I know, crazy. But they're predicting sometime in 2025, 95% of the population will be replaced by AI. I don't know if we're quite there, but in the last 6 months, at first I was seeing about 1 out of every 10 of the last couple of years was soulless. Now I'm seeing about 3 out of every 10 are soulless, and about 2 to 3 out of every 10 are completely AI. They're not soulless, but they're replaced by AI. They're run by AI. In my scans, that's just my own data. I'm not saying globally, I'm saying in my own data.
Interesting.
So I am seeing now, that they've walked out. The soul's walked out and it's been replaced only by AI.
Well, a lot of the talk with this transition is that, a lot of souls will be leaving the planet. Now, one may take that as just we're going to see a lot of death and different things happening, which I think is also happening. But you're bringing this in on a whole different realm and dimension. So that's really interesting because the words may have been interpreted in a whole different way of the reality.
And again, I just want to reiterate to everyone and you as well, this is not what I want to believe. I am being driven by what I've seen, and I'm starting to keep... I'm starting to keep charts of it because it's become, I feel, very important. The amount of unsold people I'm seeing and the replacement of AI, I feel is very important data that I don't want to trust to my memory. I'm actually writing down like names and what I'm seeing. And so then The interesting thing is, too, if they come back to me in 6 months, are they still AI? Are they still unsold? Have they been walked into? There's just so much study here when you keep good records, of what's going on.
I was just going to say, you're either in the middle or at the beginning of an extremely fascinating research study is where you're at, as you're collecting the data. And then
it is. It's so fascinating. Like, I love what I do. Like, girl, and I am like, how did I get so lucky? Like,
yeah, I was like, this is just a fascinating project. And you don't know the outcome because you're really, truly, you need a period of time to collect the data and do your comparison. Fascinating.
Sure.
So let's move to the extraterrestrials, which is sort of interesting to me because, in the past there was so much stigma that wasn't positive associated with that. But there's been a lot more softening of people's openness to extraterrestrials, I think. You have Skinwalker Ranch and a lot of different things out there that it seems to be more friendly.
Yeah.
So what is the role of the extraterrestrial forces in the disruptions or challenges that people are facing? And can you share an example from your work? Because, in talking with a lot of people in the spiritual community, a lot of the leaders, the belief that we all have some kind of extraterrestrial DNA in us, I mean, that seems to be just becoming more common knowledge anymore.
This is a hard question for me to answer, not because, I started looking at this and, what's happening to people at night. What I ran into, and I'm going to be honest, I do not have a complete conclusion on this, and I've come back based on data for what I'm seeing, because, and this because of who you are, if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the right answers.
Oh my God, that is, yes, 100%.
I was asking some of the wrong questions in too narrow of a way, and I had to broaden my data input and change some things. So I was following what you were saying, the common theories, the common public knowing, and I got the common answers. So, our ETs, our ships above our house. Yes. And, ships above your house. I have ships above my house. Everybody has ships above their house, which is why I find the whole Twitter thing and the whole, right now UAP thing hilarious, because I'm like, that's a normal night at my house. Like, I have videos. I have, the Air Force circling my house because there's a ship over. I have it on radar. I have pictures of it, hours and hours circling because there's a ship above my house. I'm like, really, guys? Like, why tonight? It's there every day. But so this is like common stuff for me. But what I've changed it, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I believe. Have you seen the is it called Nos Confondas maps? Have you seen those?
I have not.
The flat Earth maps of 3 layers. So I'd suggest, because of who you are, you might be interested in that. But there's, and your audience can look it up. I think that's what it's called. But they're a map where it shows the flat Earth model, which I don't completely believe, but it's not bad for what it is. Where we have the known, and then it has the Antarctica with the ice wall broken up. And when the ice melts at a certain time every year, you can get through to the next layer. And in the next layer, they have a lot of islands and land masses that are the names of the Pleiades, Andromeda.
Wow.
And then the next layer, there's more. And there's even Anunnaki islands and all these things. And I'm not saying that's fact. Just hold that in your mind for what I'm going to say next. But this is my gut, and this is some of my memory maybe coming back. I'm not sure I buy. Do I buy that there's different races? Meaning the Star Wars bar. Let's use that as an example. Well, I live in a habitation site. I have pictures of Sasquatch with fur, where you can see every strand of fur. I have video of me 3 feet from a Sasquatch with my daughter as a witness. I have dogman pictures of giant black wolves on my security cameras. I have pictures on my security cameras of G.I. Joe little people in detail. Like, so do I know that, different beings, different races exist? Absolutely. That look different from the Adamic Lyrian model avatar. Yes. Do I think they came from outer space? I've got to tell you, I've got a big question mark right now about outer space.
Okay.
I don't know if I believe in that.
Interesting.
Do I believe in races that we would call ET races? Greys. Do I believe in greys? Yes, I know there are greys. Greys are the mercenaries of this reality, maybe all realities. They're for hire. They'll come pick you up and take you to a ship. They'll come use a technology and freeze time. And there's a lot more of that going on too. And I've found all this out. But, they're for hire, so they work for, but who do they work for? Corporations run this reality. The agencies run, when I say agencies, I mean FBI, Mossad, Homeland. My ex-fiance works for Homeland. I have a lot of my information from him. Like the agencies and the corporations, and I don't mean corporations like Kraft Macaroni and Cheese. I mean corporations like Monarch. I mean corporations like Kruger, these corporations that people don't normally, BlackRock. They are the ones that run this reality. And they are extremely, extremely, extremely high tech. As a matter of fact, people think human cloning happens in, like we've seen in the videos in the sci-fi, and big vats of like liquid in labs with like hooked up. That's not how they clone humans. They clone humans. It's not called this, and I'm not allowed to say what it's called, but it's exactly the same process as 3D printing. They don't have to implant alien babies in your womb anymore, or they never did. If they did that, it was because of your genetics and they wanted the baby to be bathed in your frequency of the German lineage or the Irish lineage or the African, whatever you guys are. You know what I mean? They wanted that frequency. They wanted your essence because you're an ancient, limitless God being, way wiser, way more powerful than you think you are. And so I always say what we don't know hurts us all day long. And that's why I don't care about you guys, honestly. I'm asking the questions I want to know. I now am not afraid of death because of the information I found out. I understand how this reality works. I've won the game, and I'm not going to go way into how I know, but now I know that I'm above the coding of the game and that I can mold and manipulate what people call life to my will. And I don't have to respond. You understand what I mean? A car hits you, you're responding to that accident, right? Or you get sick, or your dog gets sick. Now I can create my life because I've learned it through asking all these questions. And I admit I'm still asking the wrong questions. I'm changing the questions and I'm learning new information. So do I know there's an ET phenomenon going on? Is it what we think it is? I would almost stake my life at this point that it's not. Do I know what it is? Not exactly, but I think the evil that we do to each other may be a lot more than we think.
So more to come on that one.
More to come. I'll be dying saying my last research, infinite, researcher and asking new questions. Yeah, for sure.
There's so much to know. It's all unlimited. In your experience, how do the physical elements connect with the non-dual causes like the soul level disruptions and the unseen energetic influences? Are there patterns with different symptoms and diseases people have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, obviously we have it handed down in the avatar, but as far as there's a lot of dysfunction, I think, handed down in the unresolved wounding of your choices in your unresolved choices in your previous life. I happened to meet a guy a couple years ago, and I had memories that I'd known him before, and we had a very unhealthy love-hate relationship. It was almost irresistible though. Like I couldn't, like we were like magnets, but it was unhealthy and dysfunctional, and I knew that I should step out and be done. And, but come to remember and find out that we had had a life where we had a very passionate love affair marriage. You might say soulmate. I wouldn't say what I call it extreme soulmate, but a soulmate relationship. And I had cheated on him a lot. And so he was very passive aggressive and angry to me. And this was playing out in our current relationship. There's an example. So again, you think you're non-trusting because you were born that way, or because you're 13, your boyfriend cheated on you or some stupid thing. But a lot of times these patterns were coming in with these. That's why I think it's so important we do our work, because we're so traumatized. A lot of us have seen civilizations destroyed. That's a whole nother conversation about the resets and how many of us are what I call originals and actually lived through those resets. How many of you were made in clone factories and had souls popped in, and you don't really have a family lineage beyond the resets because your family lineage started in the reset. And it just goes, but all this stuff factors into who you are and how you interpret life and how you respond and how open you are to relating, how loving you are, how trusting you are, how paranoid you are, how angry you are, how depressed you are. When you're holding a lot of trauma in your field, you're not clearing your trauma. This game is I call this game a hell realm war game. And that's actually what it was created to be. And just like, you can go to the store and buy little ponies for your 5-year-old, or you can go to the store and buy a shooting game for your husband. I believe this is the, point and shoot type of game with a few good things sprinkled in to distract us. But, all that to say, I lost my train of thought because I all of a sudden started seeing video games. Wait, where was I going with that? What was I talking about before I got into the game part?
We're focused on reset. The patterns with the health. Yep, sorry. Both of us got distracted.
Well, you're asking the patterns. So the trauma patterns. Yeah. Right. So we're so traumatized because, yeah, we did. I got distracted with my game. I started seeing the games and I was watching them. Okay. But my point is, all of us are, you said it, we're all in the same place. We're all here. And so we're all playing this game, and the game itself is traumatizing. Actually, waking up here is traumatizing, whether you know it or not, because there's so much going on that I know that's going on that you don't know that's going on, including, this is a long story, but I'll tell it because it's interesting. So Groundhog Day, the movie, you're old enough to remember that movie. Don't tell me that you're, I know you've heard of that movie. Bill Murray, Groundhog Day. People have it, though, they're too young. But Groundhog Day was a big movie back in the day, and people still watch and talk about it. But I worked at a nightclub in Chicago, obviously, when I was a lot younger, and one of our regulars was Bill Murray. Everybody hated Bill Murray because he was such a drunk. And so the girls, we took turns. We're like, you have to go talk to Bill Murray today, or you have to go talk to Bill Murray today, because that's our job, So one day it was my turn to go talk to Bill Murray, and he was horrible because he was very aggressive, of course, sexually toward the girls. So it wasn't our favorite activity. So I sat by Bill, and Bill, the first thing I said, "Hey, Bill, how are you?" And he goes, "About the same." And he said, the next thing he said is, "Do you know what Groundhog Day is about?" I'm like, "I watched it about some repeating day. I'm 20 something. I don't really care." And he goes, "You're wrong." And that got my attention. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's about the technology they have that freezes the day and rewinds it." And I'm like, "What?" He said, "It's called CERN." This is 25, 30 years ago, guys.
Oh, I got goosebumps when you said that.
And he goes, and there's many CERNs. And he said, there's many CERNs. And I forgot about that till I got years later, got into all this woo-woo stuff and knew about CERN and knew what CERN was and knew there were multiple CERNs and knew that they were freezing time. So they can freeze time in your house. They can freeze time in your life. They can freeze time, and they do in towns. And if you guys look it up, you'll see they have pictures of whole towns of people going up to these ships in their nightgowns, their pajamas, and naked. You can see it. You can see them just being levitated in these ships. Now, they don't always take you in ships. They do other things. There's so many layers of reality that I've discovered, not just talking to Bill Murray, obviously, but that it's just what you think is happening isn't happening. And so it's traumatizing you. So let's say they froze us during this interview and took both of us and experimented on us. We wouldn't know consciously, right? But maybe it was traumatizing. Maybe it was painful. Maybe we were drugged, whatever. And then they return us and we think we're in this interview. I believe in releasing trauma, but most of us come in here when we're born and we haven't done the work, which is why I've been here 85 times and not left, because hadn't had enough memory, hadn't done enough work. My frequency wasn't high enough, whatever. My point is we need to be releasing our daily trauma, known and unknown, a fight with your husband's trauma, right? But also being taken by aliens trauma, or the men in black, or the agents, or whoever's taking you, or whatever's going on. It's trauma too. So we need to, everybody's like, nervous system. Well, let's get beyond that. Let's figure out what's going on and how to just release that. So our nervous system, there's a reason all our nervous systems are screaming on. And it's not because of modern society and people are cutting you guys off on the freeway or because you had a bad childhood. It's way deeper than that. You do not understand this reality. But guess what? We also have map books to help us understand this reality. Westworld is a documentary. It shows that this is an open source video game where people reach in, they move things around, they move your life around, they can restart your life, kill you off. A lot of you guys aren't in your original bodies. You're in clone bodies because you actually died in the car accident that you thought you lived through, and they replaced you because you're too valuable to the game to take you out. And we could go into the death codes and how that's coded into the physical body and how you can remove the death codes. We can go into the aging codes. You can remove your aging codes from the body and look younger. And there's just so much to this reality.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm hoping that you'll come on the show again. You mentioned there's many people on the planet who had witnessed whole civilizations, be wiped out and go through resets.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like in we'll say our current Earth reality, that we're going through a reset, and that there is an inordinate amount of folks who have gone through that in the past who are currently here right now to up-level us a little bit?
Yeah, I actually think we may be headed. I know this is a theory. I know it's not mine alone, but I do think, Trump's has me worried a little bit because, the last whole 1800s, I believe, was a reset of the World's Fairs. The last time the World's Fairs were in, that was coming out of a reset when they had all the World's Fairs, because they were destroying the remnants of the previous. I don't believe it was just Tartaria. I don't believe necessarily in that. I mean, we're built on so many, under the ground. We're built on all the previous resets. I call it, new versions of the game. And so when Trump starts talking about World's Fair, my warning alarm goes off, because I'm thinking, are they getting ready to literally do another reset? Now, I can see timelines, and I always tell everybody jokingly, but half seriously, I'm like, unfortunately, I survived the next reset, so I'm still going to be here. But I don't believe a lot of people are going to be here. There's been calling, and I don't have to tell you what some of the thing, I'm sure you can read into when I say calling, what some of the agendas were that I believe called a lot of people recently. And I believe I live in North Carolina, 3 hours from Asheville, North Carolina. That was a calling. I'm sorry. They're still digging up bodies.
Sorry.
I think the death count, actual death count is over 20,000. Now, I'm not saying that's millions of people or anything, but that's for the United States and the disasters. That's a substantial amount of people missing from one area.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah.
And it was very unexpected.
And there's flooding like that, the weather manipulation all over the world. I know we don't hear about it, and I know we don't care, because if it's not raining here, I don't really care if it's raining there. You know what I'm saying? We have we have these micro lives and we have these macro lives, and we all are a little bit narcissistic in that way. We love ours and our own, right? But, there's calling going on similar to the Asheville level all over. Well, I'll give you an example. Maui. What was Maui? I think that was pretty clear. I mean, they cleared out an entire island, So I definitely see a reset. I think they're doing mini resets. I see those mini resets of areas. And I think people are like, where's the safest place to live? I'm like, nowhere. You just have to be at peace with, we'll deal with it when it happens, because nowhere.
If you follow the astrology, there's the blueprint for all that flooding. It was all there.
Oh,
I mean,
that's interesting.
I
didn't know that.
Follow Pam Gregory or Molly McCord. Very much into using the astrology, following, what it was like the last time. We're in many different alignments that haven't been around for 100 years or longer. So we're in a lot of unique times.
Really?
And, it doesn't predict, but the influence with the earthquakes and the floods were there. And then she'll bring up, this is what I'm saying is going to happen. And then she'll point out the different events that happened on the planet. And Asheville was one of the ones that she connected
I would be interested in
one of her, previous explanations of the alignment. So it's definitely interesting. And getting into the microcosm of people's personal fractal, their personal lives right now, there's a lot of folks who feel stuck, honestly, in life or in their health. How does your approach help them break through that barrier?
First of all, I'm extraordinary at reading timelines. So sometimes what I'll see when I'll go into their field is they're at a juncture. It probably matches with the astrology if I were to look at it. But sometimes they're literally frozen in their timeline. So sometimes when people are feeling stuck, they are stuck, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's like, wait it out. I'll say, wait it out in 3 weeks. You won't feel so stuck. The energy will change. And sometimes, there's this thing in the military, they call it get off the X. Sometimes they're just being lazy and they just feel comfortable and they're just standing on the X. And, any action, even wrong action in a military or an agency situation is the right action. Movement, action, choosing something, even if it's, quote, what I don't believe in right or wrong, but even if you perceive it as not the best choice. So often, we get this fear of failure or this fear of making the wrong choice. And a lot of it also, when I get into their fields, is they don't even know what they want. How can you move into what you want or create what you want if you don't know what you want? So it depends on the individualized situation, but I see that in quite a lot of fields. Also, sometimes it's a lot of programming and it's a lot of beliefs. If they're stuck in money, a lot of them have a lot of beliefs about money. It's wrong to have money. It's sinful to have money. I can't make more money than my parents. We even see what I call money set points in people's fields. So if you have a money set point that I cannot make more than $100,000, you're not going to make more than $100,000. Some people have money set points at $50,000. So we remove these because it's a frequency. It's broadcasting. I can't make more than $50,000. So this is a resonant program. It's a computer program, algorithm, and fractals. So you're going to attract what you're broadcasting. So if you're broadcasting that, we need to remove that. So some of it's metaphysical, of course, some of it's physical. How do you have motivation if you have low dopamine and low serotonin? So sometimes we have to bring up the dopamine and the serotonin. Sometimes we have to do genetic testing and fix all the MAO and the MTHFR and the MTRR and all the switches that are on. So you have the motivation. So you have the energy. We look in the mitochondria and we see it's not working. Well, we got to get that working. Why isn't it working? Are you full of heavy metals? Are you full of gel? Are you full of nanotechnology? Are you full of parasites? Are you full of viruses? Are you full of bacteria? Are you full of candida? Are you living in a moldy house? All house, but to the degree that it's making you chemical and mold toxicity sick. So sometimes people are frozen because, as you know, and I'm sure you've run into this a lot, because they're physically unable to create. They have no energy to create. They have no motivation to change. And I don't see that as their fault. You know what I mean? If they can't get off the couch, I don't necessarily blame them. It might not be because they're lazy or frozen. It might be because they're sick.
Right.
And they need help.
Right.
And so it's so individual. And that's the beauty.
Yes.
We're moving away, and you'll see it with the wire body nest, the positive part of the medical body networks and the wireless body networks, and getting them coming this way is, I believe, you all will be practicing way more than blood and saliva tests and all the machine tests that you already do. Much more individualized medicine, much more nuanced, individualized, holistic medicine with real data points, because I have real data points. I can read hormone levels. I can read brain chemical levels. There's nothing I can't read.
I do believe that you are before your time. I know all of this stuff is coming. It's there. The medical community probably is going to go kicking and screaming, but I love that you're.
They will, but they'll love it once they do it. They'll love it.
Of course they will.
The doctors will love staying home and being able to work from home, or from their islands, the Bahamas, or Costa Rica, or Bermuda. They're going to love it. You're going to get better treatment because they're going to be excited. They're going to be like, hold on a minute, I need to sip of my margarita.
That's a good point, because sometimes it just can seem so rote. You've talked a lot about the science. Your work explores the interplay of the science and the spirituality. How do you explain these concepts to the skeptics? Or do you?
I'll tell you how I explain. If anybody's skeptical, I challenge them. And sometimes I'll do a mini scan. There are no non-believers once they've had a scan with me.
I bet. Okay. That's an easy answer to the question.
They're just blown away, And I'm not saying everyone. Again, I've been doing this 35 years, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that I think I came here for this. I think this is my life's work. I think I was built to be a way shower. I also believe you have a similar build in a lot of ways. I was built to be a rebel. I was built to be an out-of-box thinker. I was built to challenge the status quo. All uniquely gifted and brought by my oversoul to help usher in, this next combination of spirituality and science, as you said. I don't think it will just be me. I think the new requirement will be practitioners like you and I that hold both of them in the same space and can equally apply it as needed to help you or assist you or guide you or mentor you into wholeness. And I do think you can win this game. I do think you can be deliriously joyful. I do think you can be expanded. I do think you can have great relationships. I do think you can have a full bank account. I do think you can be healthy and functional till the old age with your brain intact. All of this is possible. But again, we need to know what's stopping you from all those things and then solve that. We have to get to that root. You have to know what's wrong to fix it. I think I'm uniquely situated to help guide both communities, both the spiritual community, which is also kicking and screaming, by the way.
No, that's a good point.
And the medical community into it doesn't have to be this mysterious long process, let's just fix things. Let's just do it, and cheer our clients on, and we can all go up into the upper dimensions, because really it's so funny. Everybody's like 5G. And I'm like, are you just listening to yourselves? Like five. There's like thousands of densities. Like, this is so low. Let's go for more than five,
No, I love your attitude with this. So you had mentioned intuition. You talked about that. And, you talk about the science and the data points. What role does the intuition play in your practice? And how do you teach others to harness their intuitive gifts? Because as you said, everyone has them.
Oh, yeah, everybody. Again, I think it's mind, body, soul, spirit. So it's working on all those things. One of the things I found most hopeful in accessing any kind of intuition or any kind of abilities or any kind of higher frequency expression or connection is the silent mind. So for the past 5 years, I've had 0 point or silent mind. And that alone is worth any amount of practice or discipline that you can put into achieving that, which actually the Eastern religions have that down. They're right about that. They also teach that the silent mind, having no thought, is where all thought originates, where all creation. That's because we can differentiate. We're all mind controlled. We all have EMR. We all have images put in our mind by satellites. We're all under a form. This is an old fashioned term, but people understand it. MK Ultra. We all have implanted thoughts. We all, even sometimes you guys aren't aware of this, but there's implanted emotional programs the agencies and the corporations and the cell phone towers are broadcasting to put over us. So sometimes you wake up, you are great the day before, and you wake up and you're down and depressed and sluggish and don't feel like, getting out of bed, and you think it's you. It might be you. Maybe you ate dairy. Nobody should be eating dairy in my opinion, but maybe you ate dairy the night before or whatever. And in my case, and that affected your brain chemical balance or your hormones or whatever. But usually when I look and I'm tracing the signatures, it's a program or it's, like I said, and we don't have time to get into this, but not only do we have much assistance, we have many enemies and many forces against us. It's a game. It would be no fun if we didn't have beings and energies coming against us. So there's a lot more again going on that, if you don't know, you can't sort out. If you don't know that it's possible for someone to put an emotional program over you and change how you feel, which is just chemicals and frequency, your emotions, then you can't logically say, so I can go through my day a lot better when I'm like, this is a program. It's probably going to change because I'm probably not going to do it to you tomorrow. Fingers crossed, and you'll probably feel better if you can just get through today. So you can drive through some of this easier instead of projecting it on your kids or your spouse or your boss or your neighbors or the guy that cut you off. You can understand, again, the reality we live in and that there's, things that we aren't in control of. Just because I know what I know doesn't mean I'm not under the same thing everybody else is. But it's the knowledge that helps. Knowing that, there's an emotional program I'm under right now that's not mine helps. It helps you function in a happier way through the day. It's temporary. It's not you. You're not in a depression.
For someone who might find what you're saying really out there, I would say it's the whole subliminal messages, like in commercial or at the movies, flashing in the popcorn, pictures of popcorn that you were unaware that you saw, and all of a sudden you have a desire to buy some popcorn.
Yes.
That it's very rudimentary, but it's an example of something that's been happening in societies for a long time, which I think gives a little bit more like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. They talk about it in advertising and subliminal stuff all the time,
right?
Which when you start thinking about it, it does make this obvious.
Yeah, there used to be an app I had, and they took it off the market. I wonder why. When I tell you why, you'll know why. 20 years ago, there was an app put out by a paranormal company. It read the frequencies coming off cell phone towers. So if you go parked within a mile or less of a cell phone tower, it would print out what they were broadcasting. People don't know they broadcast things off cell phone towers. Oh, they do. Oh. And so I would go sit under these cell phone towers, and this is such a dumb hobby. This just shows you how dysfunctional I am. This is my hobby. And I had notebooks full of what the app said was coming off these cell phone towers. And it was, kill yourself. I hate you. Like, it was all crap. It was all there. You don't think you're receiving that. So when the cell phone towers are white, they're broadcasting those kind of programs. People think, so have you ever noticed cell phone towers? Okay, they have white lights or red lights. White light is when they're broadcasting mind control, subliminal mind control. Red is just when they're alert for whatever, to not to be hit. But when they're using the mind control programs, your towers will flash white. Okay. So again, if you start having weird thoughts or obsessive thoughts, some of us, I think you struggle with some of this stuff. Sometimes we get in thought loops. Sometimes, again, it's not ours. So if you're thinking weird things like, I want to eat a whole cake, and you're like, I don't even like cake. like, again, we think everything that comes to our mind is ours. It's not. They could be broadcasting, eat carbs, eat cake. Like I said, they took that off the market, but they would broadcast the craziest stuff. I mean, it was crazy, but they took it off the market. But I used to have notebooks full of that garbage. But that just goes to show that there's people that know that, this stuff happens. And again, I have a lot of contacts in the military and intelligence, and, I have family that works in it. So I have a lot of information from them.
So that's fascinating research. I'll have to pay attention. Like you, I guess, I live in the middle of a lot of wilderness surrounded by federal forest. It does make me wonder, though, because if you fly a drone, like to take pictures, if you hit the edge of the federal land, your drone gets turned away. So there's still some kind of activity with waves up there that are going on, and makes me wonder why. But it's very rural. I love it, and it keeps me away from cell phone towers. So when I'm complaining that I can't make a call, people know that I'm off the grid. My kids are always like, well, you need to carry your cell phone with you in case something happens, like when you're out there doing things. And I'm like, but why? It doesn't work half the time. So it just seems illogical to me. It really, the whole idea is turning off. And it's amazing how you can survive without your cell phone doing a lot of things.
Yeah, it sounds like me. Yeah.
Dr. Kim, if someone is really curious about your work and they want to work with you, what would that look like, and how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so secrettoeverything.com, spelled out T-O, and I have a YouTube channel, Secret to Everything, Kimberly McGeorge, Serene Wellness on Twitter. I have a free Substack, Secret to Everything. I have a Patreon, Secret to Everything, so you can just type my name in, or Secret to Everything, and there's plenty that'll come up.
Just real quick, how could they leverage the frequency that's out there in their everyday lives to maintain some sort of balance and harmony? For me, it's all about freedom, but balance and harmony is right up there with that.
One of the things I see, and I don't want to get way off because I know we're wrapping up, but one of the things that's missing from people's fields that I get worried about is music, because everything's like color and sound, i.e. frequency, but we have to have the right notes in our field to be healthy. And so I'm really worried when I see people missing music. So unfortunately, all music recorded after 1968 is twisted. So if you can get a hold of ballets or symphonies, recordings from before 1968, you can play that into your field and your body will soak up the missing frequencies and you'll be a lot healthier. That's why they changed all the music. And even the solfeggio frequencies are lies. They program you back into the matrix computer. We don't have time to talk about that. But again, what you don't know will hurt you. But if you can get a hold of music recorded before 1968, you can play that into your field. And other than hard rock, anything, jazz, opera, ballet, classical, of course, what you would consider more wholesome or harmonic, music. One of the things I'm working with one of the greatest sound masters in the world, and he's going to be providing me, I've never provided this before, but he's going to be providing me the actual pure notes to give people as part of what I would recommend. I will give them the notes that are missing from their fields. They won't have to find music from before 1968. It'll actually be the pure tones, that they need for their field. So that's going to be my next experiment level of healing. But that's something people can do for themselves. I'm also going to recommend bells. Bells are true. We've heard about the bells and how they took the bells, and the bells keep the, boogeyman away. True. I recommend wind chimes. I have 5-foot wind chimes that I hang from my deck because I'm built over a ravine. So I have like an 8-story house that's halfway up the trees, like a tree house almost. But, I have these beautiful wind chimes. And so the wind comes through the ravine and it sounds like it's church.
That is cool.
It sounds like church bells because, the wind chimes are so big. But even if you can only hang a smaller wind chime, I actually have a bell I ring. It's a pretty heavy bell. It's a Tibetan bell that I got. And, I ring it every morning. It's one way to clear your house, clear energy. The shofar is I'm not a big Bible fan, but the shofar has the right frequency. It can clear a house. Beings do not like the shofar. Play the shofar outside your house. If you're having supernatural problems, play the shofar inside your house. So all those things help. They're all, frequency-based kind of therapies.
That's sort of fascinating. The first thing I was thinking as you were talking about the music is, I have always loved music and played music, a lot of probably the wrong stuff, the hard rock and whatever, but
sure. Of course, yeah.
As I've been evolving, becoming more awake, aware, whatever term you want to use. What I've noticed was that, first it was the TV. I don't even really have a TV. And then I noticed that I wasn't playing music in the house. But then what really caught my attention was I realized that I never had the radio on in the car anymore.
Wow.
And that was one of the big fun things to do was to be blowing down the road with the windows down and the music blaring. And, life was good. I think, if I was road tripping, I'd still have to do some music. Maybe not if I was alone, though. I just seem to have this newfound peace without the sound or the noise. I'll just say that that's interesting. I'll pay attention to that. But then I was just thinking, because I can hear them, I'm not sure that they're coming on the recording, is I easily have 15 wind chimes around the house. I have wind chimes at all the barns, around the barns.
I love that.
They're singing to me now. I can hear them. I do some consultant work in my other life, and people will always talk when we're on our team meetings. I want to tell you, I can hear I'm thinking they're wind chimes in the background. They sound good. So, they're that loud that you can hear them in the house all the time. So when you brought that up, I thought, okay, so intuitively, somehow that spoke to me.
That's what I mean about knowing. I think we know more than we know that we know, and we need to honor when we're told or feel like we should do something, because I think that's our memory coming back of how things work and what we need and what our environment needs to balance,
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any last thoughts you would like to leave for the listeners?
Just want to empower them that I believe that life can be amazing. I think most of us are here, for a purpose, and some of us are just here to have fun, and that's okay too. And that there's really no right and wrong. We're all on our individual journeys. Just because I'm in my last time here doesn't mean you are, and it's okay. And I think we need to stop judging each other and start celebrating each other and start encouraging each other and, assisting each other. And everybody can get to nature. The trees in the wind, they pass the news of the whole game, or the whole world, as you would say, on the wind. So if you want to know what's really going on, you can ask the trees. So what's really going on over in Russia right now? Oh, that's interesting. Is that true or false? You need to learn to listen, how we communicate outside of here in the upper dimensions. It's all mind to mind. It's all partial merge. We all partially merge. And there's this openness. And when you're merged with someone, you can't lie. You intimately know the essence of that being without lies or deception or hiding. And so you need a good way to practice and remember who you are outside of here and other aspects of you is to sit in nature. Nature is very non-judgmental, very nurturing, very healing. And you get lots of information from plants and nature and the soil and the crystals and, what I call the interdimensionals too.
I do think that we're honing our telepathy, and that's going to become a tool that we're going to have available. And many of us already have it available. We just don't even realize that it is telepathy. Right. But I think, as you just said, that there's going to be more of that. Right. But I do want to ask for the people, we're gifted where we live at this time. Mm. For those who live in big cities, because I spent most of my life living in a big city and loved every minute of it, I will say also, what would you say about nature for those folks?
Usually there's parks, and even that is nature. I'm a big believer in plants. And if you look up EMF in plants, you guys should have plants to be helping, with the EMF and with the, bringing negative ions into your environment. Most people can grow some plants. There's some plants that are very forgiving with watering and sun and things like that. Also, I recommend negative ion generators for those that can't be in nature. That's great for the city. You're going to get your beach. It's basically like putting a beach in your home and breathing in that, negative ion like you get at the ocean. So there's lots of cheats. I still don't think there's any real substitute, for going out in nature. Even if you have an apartment, though, I think it's going out in nature. It could even be going and sitting on your balcony and staring at the sky for, when it's quiet for 15, 20. I love the sky, or looking at the clouds, or Also, animals are very, to me, even domestic animals kind of bridge the nature and the humans. So if you're a loving person, I think a lot of people actually test to bring pets in, and that can be your bridge. That's a form of nature. Or you're a lot more closer to a purity of heart and soul when you have an animal, that gives you that unconditional love. So you can bring animals in to kind of bridge that nature gap as well. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. You can go volunteer at, conservation sites. There's hiking groups, there's kayaking groups, there's paddleboarding groups, there's, I guess it's all water, or mostly water, but there's, all kinds of clubs and meetup groups in cities, more so in cities. Try something. Maybe you don't know you're a hiker because you've never hiked, or maybe you don't know that pleasure, or you don't know the pleasure of kayaking or canoeing if you've never done that. But I think sometimes we just weren't exposed to things when we were young, and we don't know. You might be a mountain bike rider, or you might be a rock climber or a skier, and I think we need to get out and move our bodies. The lymph system really needs to move. And that's a whole nother key to immune system health and to mental health. And we just need to try things. And it doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter if you're 70 or you're 17. I think we need to push ourselves. I think we don't know what we like till we try. So, there's a lot available in cities.
I totally agree. And thank you for that. Was very expansive, because sometimes they were like, well, that's nice. You live in the country. I live in the city.
Yeah, that's nice, girl. You live in the woods. What about me?
You provided a lot of options out there. I'm a big, I love the sky, but I love the night sky. It's there. I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, you have ships. You need to look for the ships above your house. You have ships above your house. You need to go out and try to get them to. I went out to Sedona in a live event, and even though my people believe me, they don't really believe me. So I like to prove what I say. So I had talked to some people. I said, when we go watch these, through the military goggles in Sedona, I said, I've got a show for you. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you'll see if you come to live events. They came to live event and we had our military goggles. And I'm like, watch this. And there's a line of 7 ships, and you could see them in the military goggles, 7 ships. I said, watch this. I said, 1 ship fired off, 2 ship fired off, 3 ship fired off. And they were like freaked out. But you have that ability to have that communication. You have ships above your house that'll communicate with you. You can say, flash your lights once, flash your lights twice, flash your lights once for no, flash your lights 2 for yes, flash your lights green, because they have different lights,
Okay.
even if you don't think they do. Flash green, flash red, and you with this whole communication. But I see there's ships above your house, so that's why I'm saying that.
I'm going to share with you that I go out on my back deck and, I invite them in constantly.
Well, there you go. You already know.
Because I think there's vibration with voice, so I do it telepathically.
Hey, there you go.
And I speak it. And I've seen some interesting things. And my brother from North Carolina was up here helping me, and the air conditioning was broken. It was, of course, in the 90s. So he brought up his hammock, and he was sleeping on the back deck.
Love that.
The next morning, like, he was beside himself. And I mean, he's still like, this is so real. And he talks about it. He's like, I was visited last night by a spaceship, and he described what happened. And exactly. And he's, an engineer, and he's done a lot of work with the government. So, I mean, he knows. He goes, we don't have anything that moves like that or comes. And it came straight down and was over my face. And then we went down to the hollow. I'm not used to this country talk, but to one of the neighbors a bit over that lives more in the valley. I'm up on the ridge. I don't quite have the lingo down.
The holler.
And she started talking about a similar experience. And I'm like, wait a minute, you two need to talk to each other. So when he left, I went out on the back porch and I was like, dude, I have been talking to you for months, freaking months, to communicate and come and visit me. And he comes for 3 days and you visit him. Like, what's the deal here?
Isn't that funny how that happens?
I didn't get a response, but I was just like, and literally I had that conversation. Yeah, I just feel like they're here and this is a safe place for them just because of the location. It's interesting that you brought it up. Anyways, another segue. Dr. Kim, I hope you come back.
Sure.
And we can have another conversation on the show. Like, wow, this has been just such an amazing interview. And the work that you're doing, literally, it's not even cutting edge. You are ahead of your time. And I'm just going to chuckle when I see these things, coming into place a little bit more. We'll say whatever the tween is between where you're at now and the mainstream. We know there's different levels of tween with that. We do know that you're making such a difference. So again, thank you. As always, I want to thank all the listeners out there. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join Dr. Kim and I. Remember and praise that wild soul. And until next time, thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.